Well, many of you know Michelle Lusson, who's speaking here today, and it's an honor to be able to introduce such a goddess of the light. For those of you that don't know Michelle, I met Michelle back in 2011, so we've had about a 4-year relationship in this life. And she is a wonderful soul. She's come here from D.C. She was in D.C. for a little while. Michelle Lusson is what you would call a clairvoyant, but she's so much more than that. There are few clairvoyants, and I use the word clairvoyant, not psychic, that can access universal information. She has a unique ability to bring in masters or great beings of spiritual light or other star systems or doctors. Now I'm saying things she wouldn't normally say because she's a very, very humble soul. So I'm gonna keep on going here about Michelle because you really have to know a little bit more about this person. This great goddess, this great starseed that has blessed this area. She had a near-death experience, giving birth to one of her daughters, I believe. And she can correct me, some of this information may not be exactly on target. And that's when it all happened. She came back fully clairvoyant, fully wide open, as we would say, as many people do with a near-death experience. But Michelle had a very difficult time. She had a very difficult time because this NDE lasted for years. She could see through walls. She had a very difficult time integrating back in to society and what we would call the normal world. Thank goodness. She developed her abilities. Society at the time was not kind. They did not understand this, most people. Michelle developed these abilities and continued on, and it was very difficult. She established a church in Washington, D.C., a spiritual church. She's a minister and a reverend and has ordained many and taught many, tens of thousands over the decades, 40 to 60,000 readings over the many decades as well. She is very humble. She's devoted her life to this work. And she just allows and surrenders the divines to come through. And when you have a reading with Michelle, and I don't like to really call it a reading, it's really a personal energetic dialogue. It's with you, Michelle, and who's ever present. It could be doctors, Edgar Casey, Dr. La Folletta. It could be Shivananda from India and Edgar Casey. They work together quite a bit in Virginia. Shivananda sent Yogananda here to build Yogaville. Not by accident, not by chance. And they work with the light in Virginia. Virginia has, of course, our political seat here, our military bases are here, and somehow they all orchestrate this together. Michelle can give you universal information from a star system or past lives in Atlantis, Tibet, Egypt, Europe, wherever. You never know where the information is going to come from. But it's specific and it's specific for you. And it weaves a story, a great story. And the readings that I've had over the years, they all meld together. They're wonderful. And they make sense. And she says things that you obviously know she knew nothing about. She has the gift. She definitely has the gift. I remember back in 2011, a crystal showed up. This one crystal, to make a long story short, was very electrical. And it was in my field with my third eye open. And 4 years later, she identified the crystal, had no idea this event had happened, and talked about the Atlantean crystals and their relationship to today and the possibility of a crystal in the bay that may have brought Captain John Smith here, that the Atlantean priests and priestesses placed 12 to 13,000 years ago right here in the Chesapeake Bay. Wonderful story, just a wonderful story. And why many of us, including Paul Solomon and Edgar Casey, were brought here. Not by accident, not by chance. So there's a rich story. A client brought in a reading from Michelle. I had just gotten this new impedance device that was used in the LA Olympics. And it was on the doctor's TV show. But what was interesting about this device, it's a highly technical device. It's a healing skenar device. And a guy brings a reading in from Michelle and says, "You have a new impedance device," Michelle says. I say, "Yes, I do, as a matter of fact." The interesting thing is, Michelle didn't know I had this device. And he said, well, you're supposed to use it on my shoulder, said Edgar Casey in the reading. I said, great, well, let's work on your shoulder. And he said, what is it? Is it the radioactive device? Is it the wet cell? And I said, no, it's something totally new. It's 100 years ahead of all that Casey did. But those were great devices in the day, and that was the technology of the day. And he says, well, it says here in the reading, Edgar Casey had a hand in designing this device. Well, I had to sit down for that one. That one kind of blew me away. So I'm telling you these things because you never know what's going to come through in Michelle's reading. She's helped so many people chart new careers. People were stuck in old jobs. They've become healers and reverends. They've expanded and expanded. She had a church in D.C., and on Friday nights, she would give readings or mini messages to everybody. I heard it was standing room only. And they wouldn't let her go. She'd give like 50 messages, she was worn out, and they'd continue on. Rumor has it, and I know she won't say this, but I'll say it for her, she gave Steve Jobs his first reading. She helped James Redfield with his books. I was in her reading room, and you can feel the energy. And when the masters come in with Michelle, it really puts you back in your seat. It's wonderful. There was a bookcase with a bunch of books on it. I go, oh, Adele Davis from the 70s, and all these, famous authors. And I said, I've read a lot of those books. And I go, you're well read. And she goes, oh, I didn't read those. Those are autographed books from clients. So Michelle has had quite the clientele in the past. She's been doing this for decades. Michelle is just an absolutely loving soul. And it's an honor to present her here today to the Fellowship of the Inner Light. So let's give a big round of applause for a starseed, a goddess, and someone who has humbly devoted her life to a very difficult task and brings in information like Paul Solomon and Edgar Casey and Ruth Montgomery. In fact, I think you had cocktails with Ruth Montgomery once, didn't you? Yeah, I love Ruth. Great seer as well. Big round of applause. Ladies and gentlemen, Michelle Lusson.
It is true, I have been in the work 40 years. And I know I'm in my 80s, but God doesn't let me go. I'm a survivor of cancer. I've had 2 heart attacks. I built a church, a healing center, and written 5 books. And I have one more book, and that is to bring my metaphysical soap opera to the public. And I have my editor over there, and my daughter agreed to accompany me. She just moved here from the Washington, D.C. area, and she said, Mom, what are you going to talk about? I said, in 30 minutes? I don't know. She said, say something to your audience that is important to every one of you. So that's what I've been thinking about. We were all brought here to Virginia Beach to be souls of light. And to be souls of light, we're part of a bigger light. You all know this. But do you know individually what you are? Do you know that you're a healer? Do you know that you're a teacher? Do you know that you're a channel? Or has life detoured you with lack of materialism, lack of love experiences, lack of feeling that you belong? It shouldn't, because You do belong, and we must create a bigger, as Ron so beautifully put it, crystal. Next year, 2016, is a huge building year. And we've got to get together so that we can be one of the building blocks to either build our churches bigger, build our light experiences more, but most of all, to bring back the spiritual teaching, the spiritual healing, and the spiritual seership, and not be afraid to have it researched, not be afraid that somebody will call us kooky at work. I've been kooky all my life. I was one of a set of identical twins. My father was a doctor, and he knew we were psychic, so he'd take us to the racetrack. We were about that big. And then he would put us in a convent boarding school for young ladies because he felt we needed to learn English. I still haven't learned it, but we spoke French, we were European, and my visions were not appreciated by the nuns. I have funny knuckles because literally I was a liar if I went to the chapel and saw an image, or if I had a dream of something was to come. I was punished so severely that I should be a basket case. And I guess in a way I am. But the biggest thing that happened here in Virginia Beach, and Ron mentioned it. I was giving birth, and the baby was in trouble. And the doctor was going to let both me and the baby die. It was one in thousands of cases. So they decided they would experiment. And I happened to be married to an architect at the time. And I left the operating room and went up on the roof of the hospital. And there I saw the air conditioner and the heaters, and I kept going. And I said, whoa, where am I going? And I began to tumble. And suddenly I stopped tumbling right as I hit this wall of light. And the voice said, you go any further, you cannot go back. I said, I'm having a baby, I gotta go back. And the voice said, it's going to be painful. Are you willing? And I said, yes, I'm willing. The voice said, good, because you have thousands of people to help. And I said, how am I going to help them? Never mind. The next thing I knew, I felt like I was being squeezed through a tube of toothpaste backwards. So painful, there wasn't anything that did not hurt. 3 days later, I woke up, and I think every doctor in the hospital visited me, but they didn't tell me what was going to happen next. I could see through walls. To you, I swear, I could have walked on water. I had powers that today I can only talk about them. But at that time, I had to learn to live with it. And it was difficult. And suddenly, my whole life changed. I ended up in Virginia Beach because my husband graduated from college and got his first job in Norfolk, Virginia. And we moved from Pennsylvania here. And I was already starting to give little readings, and a grandmother came to me that taught at Old Dominion University. She said, "Michelle, Hyde, there's a law on the books to put witches in jail." And I said, "Witch? What is a witch?" I had no idea, never having been exposed to the negative side of being a channel or psychic. But I was to learn. I understand I've been subject to different groups wishing to shut my mouth. But I've given Robert Redford a reading. I've given generals readings, and nobody's put me in jail. Except myself. Thank you. It's my daughter, Barbara, and she's the psychologist of the family. My other daughter is a nurse practitioner, and my youngest daughter is a director for Freddie Mac. So they're all very highly educated, and it's due to me. I believe in education. I'm a doctor, ordained minister, and as Ron said, a builder of a church, and a writer. And that's about all. And I see some friends in the audience, and they don't really know me because I walk in this field and I walk in this field, because it's still not totally safe to say I am a channel, because we're not there yet. But there's a few of us that must go ahead. And we chose it, and we chose to understand it. And from my past lives, I've never been a woman but once. And when I was once a woman, I was in a convent. So this lifetime I wasn't allowed to go back to the convent. I had to stay out in the world, and believe me, it's wonderful. It's hard not to feel wonderful in this area. They speak to you in the grocery store. They don't let your car break down, as mine has, on the highway without helping. You are all here today. Why? Why? What is motivating you to be in the light? What brought Paul? I prophesied Paul a year before he came. But who could I tell? Nobody. And another very interesting thing, which I think you'll be interested in, Christmas night, 1963, everybody in our house was sound asleep, and I had received for Christmas a gift of a small tape recorder, and I put it by my bed so I could record one of my crazy dreams. 3 o'clock in the morning, somebody grabbed hold of my foot and shook it. And I opened my eyes, and there's this man spirit standing at the foot of my bed, and he had funny little glasses that sat right like this. And if you've seen the old movies of Casey at the back, he said to me, to tell the truth, my name is Edgar Casey, and I want you to build my hospital. I said, oh, you're talking to the wrong person. I'm sleeping next to the architect. And I was totally sincere in my response. But then a whole bunch of things happened. A man named Albert Turner came to me at the meeting, house friends meeting, and I didn't know he wasn't spirit until he let me know. And he said, I want you to go talk to Casey's son, Hugh Lynn, and tell him that you're here in Virginia Beach. He was the former husband of Gladys Davis Turner, who was Edgar Casey's private secretary. So anyway, excuse me, I found out where the ARE was. And I drove up, and it was the White House on the hill, and like that. And I walked in, and I said, I'm to see Mr. Casey's son. I have a message from an Albert Turner. And so he ushered me into his office, or his secretary took me to his office. And I told him that I was one of psychic twins and I could give readings and so forth. He said, do you type? I said, no. He said, could you file? I said, I guess I could. Why, are you offering me a job? And he said, oh, not in the psychic world. There are only 2 masters I know, Jesus Christ and Edgar Casey. And I said, oh no, there's many masters because of the change, the transformation that we're going through today. We're leaving the 5th root race built on the 5 senses, the animal, primal self, and going to the 6th root race, which is the knowing self. So if you think you're developing psychic ability or inner knowing, so are all of us, all that are on the spiritual path. We're changing. We may not be able to see it with the 5th root race eye, but we can see it with our souls. I was hoping, where's Bruce? I was hoping you would end my little talk by playing your song on page 64. Open my eyes that I might see. Okay, sure. Would you do that? And would you get everybody to sing it? Because that way we will raise the light here today so that you move one step forward in consciousness. And I'm really honored to be here to speak to you. I am shy. And so are most of you, right? Right. So thank you all, and we'll sing together. Barb, get up here. Oh no. Page 64. Open my eyes. It's in the book? Do we need
We don't have
music?
the music, but let's just sing it without the piano.
With all your voices.
Yes. Let's everybody stand. This is a beautiful song. Okay, here we go. Open my eyes that I may see glimpses of truth thou hast for me. Place in my hands the wonderful key that shall unclasp and set me free. Silently now I wait for thee, ready, my God, thy will to see. Open my eyes, illumine me, Spirit divine. Open my ears that I may hear voices of truth thou sendest clear. And while the wave notes fall on my ear, everything false will disappear. Silently now I wait for thee, ready, my God, thy will to see. Open my ears, illumine me, Spirit divine. Open my mouth and let me bear gladly the warm truth everywhere. Open my heart and let me prepare love with thy children thus to share. Silently now I wait for thee, ready, my God, thy will to see.